A viewer requested that we make a video on adding line numbers to a file, and the file name itself should be supplied as a command line argument. So let's go over an example of how we could do this in C. Here we've got a file with 4 lines in it, and we want to add line numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 to the beginning of each line. We're going to solve this problem by creating a temporary file, and we're going to read each line from the original file, and we're going to write it to the temporary file. But when we do, we're also going to write the line number at the start of the line. So we'll need 2 file pointer variables, one for each file. We'll say file, star file for the original file, and star temp for the temp file. Now we're going to need the file name itself, and the file name is going to be provided with a command line argument. That's why we have int argc here and car star argv here. So we'll say car star file name, and we're going to set that to point to the argument containing the file name that we want to use. Just to make it clearer when we're referring to the file name, we're also going to need a temp file name, and we'll make a character array to store that temp file name. We'll use a constant to define the length of that character array. So we'll say define file name underscore size 1024. And then here we'll say car temp file name underscore size. And that character array is going to store our temporary file name. And we're also going to need a character array to read in each line of the file. We'll use a constant to define the length of that character array as well. So we'll say number defined max line 2048. And we can make both of these larger if we needed to, but they should be sufficient. So we'll say car buffer max line. Next, we're going to check to see if the correct amount of arguments were supplied, because we're going to run the program like this, ./d, and then we'll give the file name as an argument, in this case file.txt. So we expect 2 command line arguments, the executable and the file name. So if argc doesn't equal 2, we have a problem. We have the incorrect number of command line arguments, because argc is giving us that number of command line arguments, whatever it is. So we'll say if argc doesn't equal 2, printf argument missing \n for a new line, and we'll return 1. We're going to return 1 instead of returning 0, because returning 1 like this is a signal to the shell, to the terminal, that something went wrong in the execution of our program. Now, if we have the correct number of command line arguments, we're going to assign to file name argv at index 1. So argv is an array of pointers to each individual command line argument string in the order they were provided. And what we're doing is saying have file name point to the string stored in that second command line argument, which is going to be the file name. So we'll use the original file name to build the temp file name. To help us do this, we're going to include the string.h library, because it includes functions for string concatenation and string copying that we can use. So here we'll say string copy temp file name, and then temp with 4 underscores here. So what we're doing is copying into the temp file name character array the string temp with 4 underscores. So temp file name, as of right now, is going to contain this string. After this string, we're going to concatenate on the original file name. So we'll call str cat temp file name followed by file name. So str cat is going to take this existing string and it's going to concatenate on the original file name. So we'll end up with a temp file name of temp underscore 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 underscore, and in this case here, file.txt. And we'll say for our purposes, that's an acceptable temporary file name. Next, we're going to want to open up the files. So we'll say file is equal to fopen, file name, and R. So fopen is going to open the file with this name, the original file, for reading. And it's going to return a file pointer that's going to be stored into file. We'll also say temp is equal to fopen, temp underscore file name, and W. So fopen in this case is going to open up the file with the temporary file name for writing. If the file doesn't exist, it will be created. If somehow it does already exist, which is very unlikely given the name we've chosen, it's going to make the file blank before writing any new content to it. And again, fopen is going to return a file pointer that's going to be stored into temp. Now, if fopen can't open either file for whatever reason, file or temp, or both of them, are going to be set to null. So fopen returns null if it can't open the file. So we'll check for that. We'll say if file is equal to null or temp is equal to null, we're going to exit gracefully. We'll say printf error opening file \n, and again, we'll return 1 to signal that an error has taken place. Now we're ready to start reading the content from the original file one line at a time and writing it to the temp file with a line number at the front of each line. To help us do this, we're going to need one more variable to keep track of the current line. So we'll say int current line is equal to 1, because initially we're going to be on the first line of the file. So to read in each line of the file, we're going to use fgets. So we'll say fgets buffer max line and file. And the way fgets works is that each time it's called, it's going to read in the next line of the file until it reaches the end of the file, at which point it's going to return null. And what it's going to do is read in the line from this file and store up to max line number of characters into buffer. So we'll actually put the call to fgets inside of a while loop condition. We'll say while fgets doesn't equal null. So long as fgets is not returning null, we're going to continue to execute the loop body. We're going to stop executing the loop when fgets does return null. And we know that's when we've reached the end of the file. Next, we're going to print this line of content to the temp file, but with a line number in front of it. So we'll say fprintf temp %d %s followed by current line and buffer. And here we're printing to the temp file a string where we have an int, a space, and then a string. And the int is going to be the current line number, and the string is going to be the line we just read in from the original file. Next, we'll increment the current line. So that way the next time this loop body executes, the current line number will be correct. Now we're done actually creating the temporary file. So we'll close the temp file, and we'll also close the original file. The last thing we'll do is delete the original file and then rename the temp file to the original file name. So we'll say remove file name to delete the original file and then rename temp file name file name. So we're going to rename the temporary file to have the original file name, having the effect of replacing that original file with a new version of it that has the line numbers. So we'll try compiling the program and testing it out. We'll say GCC and we'll compile the program. And then we'll say /d file.txt. And after we run the program, we find the line numbers in the file as expected. And if we don't supply the file name command line argument, we get an error, argument missing. So this is how we can write a C program to add line numbers to a file that's name is given as a command line argument. Check out portfoliocourses.com, where we'll help you build a portfolio that will impress employers, including courses to help you develop C programming projects.